So today we're going to talk about finding percent of change. We talked about a little while ago percent of a number, so let me just kind of remind you and refresh your memory about percent of a number. Remember, percent and finding percent of a number is just a proportion. So is over of equals percent out of 100. That's our percent proportion. This is your part, and the bottom is your whole or your total. So this is what we've been using to find numbers like sales tax and tip when you go to a restaurant, discount, things like that. This is our original percent proportion right here. Percent of change is just a tiny bit different. So we're looking for percent of change. We will see things like percent of change when it comes to how much prices have gone up or down. We're coming up on Thanksgiving and Christmas. That means a lot of people are going to be buying things. We see percent of change quite a bit when we're talking about prices at a store. So percent of change is the exact same. There's only a tiny bit of a difference over here. It's still percent, and percent is always still a number out of 100, so that's the same. The only difference is on this side over here, instead of your is over of, this is your original price. And we're going to talk about that, your original price or your original number. And on the top is the amount of change. So how much something changed. And normally you find the amount of change by doing some subtraction. So we've got percent over 100, your amount of change goes on top, so it's still the part. It's still the part of the number, and your original number, it's still your total, but it's the number before anything happened. So I think the best way to do this is to actually look at a question. So we're going to look at this question together. It says last year there were 381 students at Woodland Middle School. This year there are 419 students. What is the percent of change? So you'll notice we're looking for percent of change. Is it a percent increase or decrease? So we can look after the question's over and kind of figure that out, but it started at 381 students and it went up, and now there are 419. We might actually be able to answer the second question before we begin. It went from 381 up to 419, so I would say this is a percent increase. It increased by a certain percentage. Let's go ahead and build our proportion box. So we're looking here, and we said percent is always a number out of 100, and it says what is the percent of change. So I'm missing the percent part. I'm missing that piece. That's why my variable is going over the 100. The original value, because up here it tells me on the bottom to put my original value before anything changed. There were 381 students at Woodland Middle School. So the original value is 381. This is the only difference now with percent of change. So for this value right here, I need to find the amount of change. I need to find how many students did it change by. So if there were 381 and it went up to 419, all I need to do is subtract those two values to find my amount of change. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract those two values. And that means that it changed by 38 students. It changed by 38 students. So I'm going to plug in my amount of change. 38 students, it changed 38 students out of 381 original students. And now to solve this proportion, the great part about solving a proportion is every single time you solve it the same way. So I'm going to multiply 381 times x, and that's going to be 381x, and 38 times 100, which is 3,800. So 381 times x equals 3,800. Again, this is just now a one-step equation. So times 381, 381 is my coefficient. To get rid of the times 381, I do the inverse, which would be divide by 381. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. Divide by 381. And in this case, these guys cancel. I'm going to go ahead and use our calculator here. So 3,800 divided by 381. And I'm going to say this is about let's round it to a 10%. This 9 tells this 9 to go up. So we'll say this is about 10%. So when it's asking what is the percent of change, what is the percent of change in this problem, it changed 10%. So we said it increased, the student population at Woodlands Middle School increased by 10%. Again, the biggest thing to remember is the amount of change over the original number. That's kind of what we need to make sure we keep in mind.